There's a chaotic scenery before this scene. Vince at 7 left standing there as there's banging in different areas of the house and glass shattering at first. There Vince was at 7, standing there, listening to all the commotion. He was used to this, but this time, his gut, his nerves will always get bad, but this time, he felt it. He felt it was different this time. He just stood there, hoping the TV would drown it all out. He stood there hoping the TV would drown it out. The banging stopped, and so did all the commotion in the background. There was moments of silence, a couple more shuffling, of course, but relatively silent. 30 minutes went by and he was still sitting there, almost forcing himself to watch the same show until it ended. And even then, loud banging from the front door. He slightly glanced at the door but did not move much. After about 10 minutes, the door came crashing down. He jumped a little bit. He just turned around slowly, shuffling his feet towards the door, and still stayed still. There were about 15 men with firearms, and they went upstairs, not shifting their attention to him once. The police sirens only amplified what he was feeling in his heart. Fear. It felt like fire that he couldn't escape. He knew it should have been fear that made him run out the front door that was busted down, but he could not move. A couple seconds went by. "Put your hands up!" he hears loudly, echoed through the staircase. His ears twitched. His heart raced. He knew things were different this time. Through the front door, he could see his neighbors, all in their gowns, staring into his house like it was an open zoo. The embarrassment shattered him to his core. It was all out, that his family was crumbling. How was a 7-year-old supposed to process that? Shortly after, his parent is escorted off the premises. It was his mother. She didn't look at him much, but she gave him a pity side look, and she was covered in something. He didn't even want to imagine it. But she was gone, and he knew he wouldn't see her for a long time. He'd never seen anything like this, not even on the TV. Things would get bad, but not this bad. All the rest of the men came downstairs and again ignored his existence entirely, which did not help. The last man came down, glanced at the kid and started walking over. And the kid's fists clutched. I guess his fight was kicking in since his flight couldn't. The officer looked at his fist and, "Young man, that's not the thing you want to do. Well, I guess you don't have a home now." Vince hated that. He hated someone looking down on him like that. Or that's how he seen it. Because what the cop was really trying to say was, you're the small guy here. Vince unclenched his fists as a small tear rolled down the side of his cheek and down to the floor, making a splash. He could not bear showing emotion to this man in front of him who took his family apart. It was his fault, and nothing would ever be the same from then. There Vince stood, overlooking all the rest of the kids from the foster care. He had been number 9 out of 10 and was rarely accounted for. At this time, where they played outside a little bit before supper, a bell rang. This bell was to call them in for supper, where Vince would just usually wait until everyone was done so that he could eat alone. This was his sanctuary, being solo, even if it meant having the last of the pot. "Vince!" a little girl yelled out. Vince turned around and gave her an inquiring stare. And as she approached, "It's time for supper, Vince. You should probably come eat," knowing that he probably wouldn't budge either. "Okay, I'll be there in a minute. I'm just busy right now." Vince continued to look out into the distance, turning his attention away from her. She just gave an awkward smile and went on her business. There wasn't much she could do when Vince made up his mind. And he didn't mind that people thought he was difficult. He found, again, sanctuary in it. It was his little trick. Get people to walk away from him before they start asking too many questions about how he feels, what he thinks, things like that. Vince sat there, eyes tracing the marks on the desk. He knew school was out, yet perpetually checked the time. So he just felt put off, and he'd rather go to his temporary sanctuary. Yes, Vince. He looked around the class, and the kids were all anxious to stay behind the door. Yeah, chatter as usual, but they seemed a little antsy this time. I mean, of course, the school had drama in it. It's every other high school. What did you expect? Vince wasn't that in a rush to get home. As the bell rang, bells. Vince had a personal issue with bells, as if they commanded every aspect of people's lives, whether it was bells, alarms, horns. They had so much power. He snapped out of it and collected his things, and was one of the last ones to leave the class, in which he did not mind. A kid rushes past him. "Vince! Dude, there's a fight. You're missing it." He continues to go on about his way towards the fight. The kid, of course. And Vince is raising an eyebrow. Now he walks there, but by the time he gets there, he's astonished. I mean, he doesn't usually check these things out, but it was interesting. 2 big boys were there, tumbling on the ground in the courtyard in front of about 100 kids. It had to be. Some with their phones out, but of course Vince didn't have those luxuries. He spotted one of the boys with slightly darker hair. His attention was drawn to him. For reasons we don't know. But the striking similarity Vince saw in him just really put him off and disturbed him. But he couldn't not root for him. I mean, what if he was in a fight? I mean, he wouldn't get in one, right? Damien, get off of him. You're hurting him. A girl from a grade higher than him, she was well known for all the wrong reasons, started whimpering. And this was enough to catch Damien off guard, in which he caught a mean left hook to the chin. It cracked the air, and quite frankly, it wasn't quiet. But this was enough to knock Damien off of his feet, and the tide started to change. Something in Vince lit up. It's almost like he wanted to help Damien, like he had a sense of loyalty, but did not know where it come from. His eyes started lighting fire, and he was never taught about fights, but he was willing to. His actions interrupted his thoughts. His feet started moving before he could finish, and then you heard, "Who is he?" Other students said. "What is he even doing?" Comments followed shortly after. Vince landed a mean left hook to him, almost to counteract the right one threw at the boy previously, and he felt good about it. His justice, it was a sense of payback. He felt a sense of justice, one that the cops in his past was a way of redemption. "Hey!" The school administrator shouted out before them, disappointment in their voices at the crowd and the participants, of course. The boy Damien got up quickly off his feet, as if he was in a trance and recently just snapped out of it. He looked at Vince for a second, then slugged towards him, ringing cascades in the air, just to prove that he didn't need any help, I guess. "I didn't need your help," Damien states. He regretted getting involved now. He didn't say anything, but his nose did start bleeding, and he had to unclench his fist, of course, because he wasn't trying to start anything. It had been over, and he didn't like being hit. 3 administrators escorted the boys into the office as they hung their heads down with shame. Although Damien didn't look like he regretted any of it. Walked away with the last punch too, even if it wasn't from his opponent. No one had said a word to them. No one even cared to ask. I mean, they weren't going to get anything out of the boys anyway. "Well, since no one has anything to say, I guess you all played equal parts in the altercation," the lady from the office said. "Well, I'll have you know, all of you will be written up, no matter what part you played." She finishes. Vince didn't even see the point in explaining how he got involved. It kind of seemed like snitching, and to Vince, it wasn't worth the embarrassment. The door swung open vigorously. "Let's go now," one of the children's mothers said. After the boys' parents came in and retrieved them, there was an awkward silence in the office. "And who's coming to get y'all?" Another lady stepped out. "I mean, your parents, something like that. Aren't they supposed to be here by now?" She finished, inquiring at us both. We both looked at each other, and then looked back to her. "He's not my brother," Damien answers for the both of us. "Well," she's taken aback, and says nothing else. "Well, my mother will be here shortly. She's a busy woman." Damien corrects himself. It seems as he have mild manners, but he got himself involved in whatever hell that was. "And what about you?" She looks at me with piercing blue eyes. "They aren't coming," Vince says reluctantly. "They aren't going to show up. They're away on a vacation, and neither does it matter. Hey, can't you just release me? Vince tries to pry out of the woman. I'm sorry, I can't do that. She answers bluntly. Well, it doesn't matter. I'm getting moved anyway to another home. Oh, you're one of those foster kids, she inquires. Vince doesn't say much. Yeah, one of those. 30 more minutes go by and a woman with fire red hair opens the door effortlessly. Come on, boy. I suppose this was Damien's mother? Vince looks up as he is caught in awe of her fire red hair. It was much like something he's seen before in his childhood, somewhere close to home. She took off her sunglasses. Come on, boy, you're taking too long. You got your stuff? And is he getting rid of Samantha? The two women spoke back and forth as if they knew each other. Vince was just ready to go. Soon they would give up. No one was coming. Okay, Damien, we'll talk in the car. Her eyes shifted suddenly, and she was caught, dead in her tracks. Her eyes landed on Vince, and she was taken aback. And do you mind who I ask? Who are you? Was she speaking to me? Vince questioned in his head. He didn't think so. Boy, who are you? She asked in a more serious tone. Vince looks up. He's nobody. You don't have to worry. He came from nowhere, and he doesn't even have a family, Damien says with a smirk. Excuse me, Damien? Don't ever let me hear you talk to anybody else like that again, she finishes. Vince was used to the assault, the events, and everything else that came with it. Being a child who was known not to have a base family. Yep, it was like this. The blue-eyed, blonde-haired lady stepped in. Well, I think Damien meant that he was in foster care. Is in foster care. A brief silence spewed throughout the atmosphere. Okay, well, where are they? She inquires. Damien's mother always had a niche for watching out. She didn't like it. Just people just leaving their kids. Reminded her something. Hey, boy, you don't mind me asking. Her curiosity started to get the best of her. What is your last name? Vince did not want to answer this question. This was the last question he wanted to answer. People digging up his past, it wasn't his thing. But she was serious, and either way, she was going to get that answer. So he gave it. Vince King. My last name is King, to be correct. It was a silence. Her breath hitched. Well, I'll be damned. You're 15. Vince nodded. Over the questions, seriously. Nobody had noticed the blonde-haired woman looking frantic for the past 15 minutes. Do you perhaps know his caretakers? The red-haired woman gathered her things and put her shades back on abruptly. Damien, let's go, she avoidantly uttered as she put her arms around her couch. Damien was unbothered and moved swiftly. Ma'am, please, the blonde-haired woman shouted out. If you know where this young boy can go, she pleaded as the last result. The red-haired woman turned her head around swiftly. Now, Samantha, you know I cannot do that. Her name was Samantha. Interesting. Vince liked to take account of the people that surrounded him. He did it quite often. Jeanette, just this one time, the office lady Samantha uttered. Her name was Jeanette. How interesting. He accounted for it in his head again. Truthfully, he hated this entire situation because it made him feel powerless again. Like that one time. People discussing his whereabouts like he was some type of pond, a goldfish, disposable one. The lady interrupted his dwelling, looked at him, and sighed. All right, boy, Let's go. I got a place for you. With every turn of the tire, the deadly silence became evident. So who even is that kid? Damien looked at his mother in question. Damien looked back, and Vince did not hesitate to give him the nastiest look he could muster up at that time. The boy turned around unfazed. With a brief pause, Jeanette hesitantly answered, "Well, Damien, that's your cousin." Both of the boys choke-offed and looked at each other intensely before Damien looked back at his mother. "What the hell?" Damien blurted. Now you better watch your mouth," Jeanette demanded in a serious tone. "And I've told you about that mouth of yours." She averted her attention back to the road. "Now he's family, and he may not know us from a can of paint, but one thing's for certain, he is my sister's child." As an older sister, Jeanette was more than family oriented. She felt that she had to serve a duty. Guess it ran in the blood. And even though her sister stopped talking way before the baby was born, she wouldn't be able to face herself if she turned her back on her nephew. It wasn't in her. She knew what she had to do from that day forward. It was later that night when Mama Jeanette told Vince to call his caretakers, in which he did, and they seemed less than concerned about his whereabouts. He could care less either. They didn't have the best of relationships. "Do you like those people?" Mama Jeanette asked as she dug her cigarette ashes off the banister. They had been on the porch for a couple hours talking about the family. Vince mentioned how rich they were. He could damn less where he was. "I have no feelings towards those people, if I've got to be honest," Vince started. "And I won't even be with them next month," he finished. Mama Jeanette put her cigarette out after one last puff. "You sound like her, and you look like her too." There was a silence. "Your mother. And I know you probably don't care, but I'm just saying," she finished. The boy looked up from the ground. His curiosity was piqued. "Can I see her?" Vince questioned. Mama Jeanette tapped her foot on the oak wood beneath them. "Oh, baby, your mother's way right now. And don't you go asking any more questions here," she finished up. The boy turned his attention back to the land that overlooked the forest. It was a beautiful sight. Rather different from the mansion, but it was peaceful. He sighed. "Well, do you have any pictures of her?" He asked daringly. The crickets from outside drowned into their conversation, and she slowly got up from the chair, without a word, and excused herself. She returned 15 minutes later, bringing out 2 pictures from her pocket. "Here she is," Mama Jeanette said while plopping back on the chair. Vince's eyes lit up as they landed on the first picture he was presented with. The lady, she looked very familiar to him. She had longer, wavy brown hair, just like him, and hazel eyes, from what he could gather. The picture was a little dingy, but he appreciated it nonetheless. The silence of him taking in the sights of the pictures. "Yeah, that was Janine for you," she whispered to herself with a faint smile. Mama Jeanette looked over to Vince, and her smile faded, as though something had crossed her mind. "So where are they placing you, boy? You get moved around a lot?" She concerningly questioned again. Vince knew better at this point than to avoid her questions. Her tone tensed up as she began to feel sorry for the boy. "A lot is an understatement," Vince starts. "It feels like I'm at a weekend stay in a hotel, or a motel, sometimes," he finishes. "And it's been like this for..." Vince drags out and stops talking. He didn't want to talk about that. Jeanette cuts him short. "Yep, it's okay, baby. You don't have to go into it. Jeanette turned her head away from him so that she can hide her emotions. This in which Vince did see, also ignored. He didn't like people pitying him. A couple seconds go by and she looks back over to Vince. Would you like something a little bit more permanent? She asked seriously. Vince's eyebrow raised. I mean, he didn't want to show, but he just slightly nodded his head. And without a word, Mama Jeanette knew what to do next.